Hello, everyone. My name is Keely Denenberg. I'm Senior VP of Client Solutions here at Orange Grove Consulting. And today I am joined by Dr. Kelly Watson, one of our co-managing partners here at Orange Grove Consulting. And we are talking about assessments. So, of course, Kelly, you know this, but we offer culture and climate assessments as one of our many solutions. And sometimes organizations aren't really sure what that is and what it's comprised of. And they also sometimes want to know, well, what's the difference between a culture and climate assessment and an engagement survey? So I would love to have you talk a little bit about what our culture and climate assessment is and how it differs from an engagement survey.
That's great. Thank you. So they're both tools that are, important for gauging the health of the organization and whether or not employees are satisfied, happy, and able to be productive in their jobs. So really, really important, right? The culture assessment is more of a broad tool that is, and an exploratory one that is usually it's comprised, in our case, it's comprised of both quantitative and qualitative measures. So we tend to get some quantitative data, HR data from the organization. We tend to do a survey, and then we will supplement all of that with focus groups and or interviews of key staff. And we also on our surveys have a lot of open-ended questions. And what we're really trying to do is hear about the different experiences of employees and whether or not that there are processes in place for that are fair, and that's really at the root of the whole thing. Are people feeling that they're getting a fair experience from the organization? And then how that's different from an engagement survey. Well, they're both tools that are, used to gauge the health of the organization and how employees feel. The engagement survey tends to be more of a narrow focus because what you're really trying to do is you're trying to get the quantitative drivers. It's a much more quantitative tool usually. And you're trying to actually get the drivers that are correlated to engagement. So what are the things in the organization that are most likely to influence overall engagement, and then help you pinpoint how to manage those drivers themselves. And so it really has one outcome variable, which is engagement, whereas culture, has a lot more. It's covering a lot more broad sort of variables that are at play in the organization. Um,
Well, to
yeah.
not to interrupt you, but to that point, we have a scorecard for our culture and climate assessment with 12 key performance indicators. So it is broader than that measure of engagement. So,
Exactly. So that's exactly why, because we're looking at a whole bunch of different dimensions. And whenever we do one, we don't know how it's going to work out, right? We don't know what area of the organization may have problems. And so in that way, it's very exploratory. And we often recommend that folks do a culture assessment before they even sign up to do training or sign up to specifically do an intervention, because it we don't know, people don't have money to waste, right? And so throwing a bunch of training at a problem, if that's not the problem, is really ineffective. So you want to understand where are the issues and how can we pinpoint our resources to exactly the problem instead of solving something that's not a problem.
right, right. So, what are the benefits of a culture and climate assessment? I mean, in addition to what you just mentioned, maybe
Right.
targeting certain interventions.
Yeah, it's really about identifying differences in perception. And it's often the case that organizations are so designed to reinforce homogeneity, right? It's like the folks that fit stay and the folks that don't leave. But that can be a real problem for any DEI initiative, or if you're trying to drive, more diversity of thought and experience into your organization. And so it's really important to identify gaps in perceptions, and that could be generational gaps. More increasingly, actually, it's generational gaps. Or it could be gaps in perception in gender from a gender lens, or it could be from a racial or ethnicity lens. So it's really important to just use the survey to you use the tools to identify those perception gaps. The second is that by conducting it, it can allow you to track progress over time because you can get yourself a baseline of where the organization stands, and then you can check in every couple of years and make sure that you're making progress. And then finally, it really is a great way of highlighting if there are leadership effectiveness gaps. Because, so for example, if particular areas of the organization, a leader's skills are maybe not as strong as others, it tends to show up when you do these cultural survey assessments because it pinpoints areas where maybe there are less fair policies or less fair treatment by different folks, and you can really figure out what leadership skills need to be shored up if you can identify this across the organization.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it shows you current state. And just like any initiative, I think about sales at an organization, and you would never come up with a strategy for sales without knowing what what your current state is. So, in a way, I think that's the best way to sum it up. How do you know what to do unless you know what's actually happening?
Exactly.
So, all right. Well, thank you, Kelly. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And please check back to our YouTube channel for more short videos like this one. Take care.